I tried my best. Denise, and you look at these two, and what three cases did you come up with?
So the first one is the case in 1947, so well before my time. The Overall Yacht case.
Way before your time, right?
Yes, way before my time. With the couple being blown up on their yacht, the accusation being that their daughter and her boyfriend had actually bludgeoned them to death first and then blew up the yacht to cover it up. And from your story, I learned what a notorious case it certainly was at the time. Huge amount of public interest, their love letters being published, and culminating in a not guilty verdict in a courtroom surrounded by thousands of people waiting to hear the answer. And I think what was most interesting for me about reading your depiction of that is I've often wondered about the appeal of cases of television shows like the shows on Court TV, Nancy Grace, the innumerable Larry King programs that revolve around crime. And I've always thought of it, I guess, as a relatively new phenomenon, engendered maybe by the O.J. Simpson case. And so what's fascinating to me about the overall case is that this is not a new phenomenon, it's just new medium. That with cable television there's been more opportunity to indulge the interests of, I guess, millions of people who are just get fascinated by cases that have, especially like the Overall case, sex and money and romance and those kinds of elements that interest people.
And I think that case had the ultimate moment of drama, the high drama, when the verdict was about ready to be announced and 5,000 people surrounding the courtroom, and they didn't know if it was going to be guilty or not guilty. So the suspense was poignant then.
My second, and I'm going chronologically, is the David Brown case, which is
Oh yes.
a case I remember from my youth going over and watching because I was relatively new to the felony panel when it was being tried, and I watched it. This is the case of David Brown, who manipulated his daughter and his juvenile sister-in-law, soon to be his wife, into killing the present wife.
And the daughter had a unique name.
Cinnamon Brown.
Cinnamon Brown.
Right.
Yes. David Brown was no George Clooney, yet he seemed capable of making women do things for him for who knows why. The unique thing was that Cinnamon Brown not only participated in the killing, but somehow was compelled to take an overdose of sleeping pills and write a note incriminating herself. So that in fact she was the one who was convicted of the crime and went off to serve time, while her father then married the sister of his murdered wife and impregnated her. Ultimately, Cinnamon Brown, through the care and attention of, I believe, both her attorney and the investigating officer, grew up enough and found out enough about what was going on at Daddy's house while she was gone that she came forward, and the case was ultimately made against David Brown. And I think what's fascinating about that case for me is, one of the fascinating things is in this day and age when we're so curious about why juveniles would behave the way they do, where we've seen Columbine and we've seen juveniles commit crimes and we're sort of horrified about them. This is a case where these young women were really manipulated, and you can see how easily juveniles can be manipulated, and how it took them growing and maturing, along with a lot of help from people like Jay Newell, before they got to the place where they could tell the truth and make sure that the real perpetrator was put away.
An amazing case that demonstrates the psychological manipulation from father to daughter. And not only was it a book, it was a made-for-TV movie.
Yes, yes it was.
And your third case?
My third case is the case of Sheriff Corona.
The most recent case on our list.
The most recent case on your list. Partially because it's just such a Greek tale of rise and hubris and fall, yes, that it was Shakespearean. It's, for him to have gone from, in 2002, in the wake of the Samantha Runyon case, going from America's sheriff and Larry King and talk about him potentially being lieutenant governor someday, to go from that to convicted felon, obviously is a huge drop. And additionally, the fact that it took probably the Hadel case, another case on your list, to cause that to unravel in the first place.
Beginning of the end, right?
Yes, the beginning of the end. It also makes it incredibly fascinating. So obviously that story's not over yet. He's appealing the charge he was convicted of, but it seems clear that he and his buddies, Jaramillo and Hadel and Cavallo, seemed to think that this county was their piggy bank and their road to fortune, and no one could have foreseen that when Sheriff Cronin was striking that heroic pose 8 years ago now.
Let me go through my 3 cases,
Right.
and I go back a long ways to my
Yes,
first
you do.
case.
Yes, you do.
The 1920 case of